What is the crack, YouTubers? Welcome to another episode of Two Bald Knobs. It's myself, Skarnir.
Hey guys, it's me, 6+ Stevo.
Your hosts as always. And in this episode, what are we going to be talking about this time around, Stevo? There's what's the latest sort of news that's creeped through?
Well, the latest news, and it's non-orc related, but I have seen an awesome little teaser trailer for the release of Abaddon the Despoiler updated, and that's just, I say a teaser because I'm sure most people listening now have seen this trailer. You see little parts of him. They haven't revealed the entire model yet, but about bloody time. He's looking stunning. The trailer was awesome as well. How it teased at the beginning to it being a new Primaris lieutenant, and then you see Drakion, is it? Abaddon's sword kind of come into frame, and the Primaris lieutenant is the dead body that Abaddon is stood upon. So it was a really cool, yeah, it was a lovely nod to an acknowledgement from GW about the ridiculous slew of Primaris lieutenants that have been released. But yeah, really cool. Even though I'm not a Chaos player, I was once upon a time. So cool to see Abaddon finally getting a new model, and hopefully the model he deserves. But yeah, it's I'm very envious of Chaos players right now, because
I can understand that. Yeah, it's like, where's our Gazgul, you kids?
Bloody right. It's they've had their Chaos have got their big arch villain, the big bad, redone, brought up to date. We're still stuck with the old metal or fail
Even
cast.
he's fail cast now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he's not even metal.
Cast. Missed opportunity, GW. Missed opportunity, and more salty Orc players here. But yeah, October would have been an amazing time to update Gazgul in a similar vein. But yeah, Chaos. It's looking like a good time to be a Chaos player this year. I think they said last year was the year of the Xenos. This year is definitely set to be the year of Chaos, if some of these releases and sneak peeks we're seeing are anything to go by. Because the what's the other release I've seen that they've got coming out? Other miniatures. What are they called? The big hulking dudes that grow different guns.
Oh, Obliterators.
Obliterators. That's it. Yeah.
That's like big hulking dude. What's he on about? Obliterators. They look totally different.
I've always loved the lore for Obliterators. I've loved the concept of them.
But the models have always been naff.
Yeah, not so much. I remember way back in third, the hideously ugly miniatures they had then. They've got slowly better over time, but still never quite did it for me. Now they just look fucking gorgeous, I have to say. And I saw on one of the Orc community pages on Facebook, someone suggesting converting those into Mega Knobs or War Bosses.
War Boss, yeah.
So
they look big, like.
Yeah, they look good. They look good. It's yeah, very envious of Chaos players right now. And they've got what's the spider thing they've got coming out? Another like a miniature defiler. It looks like a robotic Shelob from Lord of the Rings with guns attached to it. It looks, again, gorgeous. All look to be multi-part models with options, something we didn't get.
Don't be bitter. We're not allowed to be bitter.
Oh my
We're just the Orc players who just whine now. That's all it is. But did you see with that Shelob sort of robot spider, one of its limbs is actually a Necron limb? If you look at the image. Yeah, if you look at the image, one of the legs off it is a Necron. It's like a Necron tomb spider limb. Directly it is a Necron tomb spider limb. So maybe it's like they've captured some Necron technology and done funky stuff with it. We don't know. It'd be interesting. I don't know 100%, but it's looted bits of there.
That's cool. So, so even Chaos get better looted stuff than us then.
Yeah.
They're allowed to loot things.
Just rubbing salt in the wound now. That's all. Just salt in the wound. Does that mean it's going to be open play rules?
I'm a bad-tempered sod today. You'll have to excuse me.
That's all right.
But yeah, no, that's the only sort of bit of news I've seen recently that sort of caught my interest. I think there's some new Primaris stuff out. I don't care. There's the Chaos stuff. I'm an Orc fanboy, but Chaos is another sort of secret love of mine. I do, I've got a soft spot for the Chaos boys, especially Black Legion. And yeah, it leaves me a bit more hopeful for future campaign books and things. You never know. Gazgul, it's going to be done at some point, whether it'll be in our lifetimes, but yeah.
Back in my day.
Look forward to that day. Yeah. Yeah, he desperately needs an update. But yeah, that's a bit on the news anyway. I know what we're here to talk about in depth, though, is the Vigilus Defiant book. And I know you've got a lot of things to say about this.
Book 1 of the Vigilus Defiant campaign. Now, my problem is, in general, I'm a sucker for a campaign book. I really am. I like the idea of campaigns. I'd like to actually play one. I've never actually played in a campaign fully. Like, I've played Necromunda games. I've played some Gorka Morka. You know what I mean? I've played some games like that. You're talking about Black Legion. I'm sort of making a Black Legion kill team at the moment for Chaos. So I've been cracking away at that. But I've always bought the campaign books from 40k, like the past few that they had. I think the last one where Orcs were predominantly a part of the narrative would have been the Stormclaw box set. And I think that was back in 2014. Could be sort of wrongish, don't quote me on that, but that was the last campaign book that Orcs were predominantly in. And we have Orcs in Imperium Nihilis, Vigilus Defiant, the first book. But I don't know, I'm not too enamored with it. When we get down to the nitty gritty when it comes to the formations and the rules, well, they're not formations in quotes. they're specialist detachments. Honest, they're not formations. Yeah, there's like the Dreadwa, Stomp 'em Mob.
Special.
Yeah, they're nothing to write home about. So just as an Orc player, from the Orc player's perspective, it's just a bit disappointing personally. I know I sound like I do nothing but give out and moan about anything Games Workshop do for Orcs, but I want to be positive. It's like, send something decent their way and I'll sing praises for it non-stop, but there's just too, like, one of the first points I want to get in about it is there's too many factions shoehorned into it. To me, it feels like when you're reading through the campaign and the fluff, they've tried to stick as many factions in as they can. So they're like, oh, well, there's the Orcs have landed initially, and then there's the Gene Stealer cultists, and it's like, that's cool, that's grand. Oh, the Imperial Defenders are in Chaos and Disordered. So it's like, at that stage, reading through that part where it's like, you have an uprising internally, you're being attacked by invaders on the outside. Yeah, you have, like, big shields to hold them off. Then they fail. And then what forces you do have aren't being used properly. It's like, at that stage, it's like, well, this planet should have fell. You know what I mean?
Like, Exterminatus.
Yeah. It's like, how shit are Orcs at that stage? It's like, we're just...
Yeah, you've got a Gene Stealer cult uprising just causing absolute carnage from within, disrupting all plans. Orcs running rampant across the planet. If the cult uprising is in full force, that means the Hive Fleet is fucking close. Yeah. Exterminatus seems the only option at that point.
It just... Like, the story just writes up how vulnerable the planet is in general in regards to water and stuff, and how some of the water was tainted and they lost control of some... So, like, a large proportion of the planet should just be fucking dead at this stage. But it's... I don't know. It's like the Orcs were there just for the crack. They've done it before. We're just the comic relief at this stage. I've said it before and I said it again. It's like, Harlequins might have the paint job for the clowns, but the Orcs are the true clowns of 40k at this stage, because they just don't take the faction seriously. They really don't. Like I said, the planet should have already fallen. And
yeah, they're very much just there as whipping boys.
Yeah, we're a side note. We're a little sort of oh, look, we'll draw the Orc players in. We'll just say that the Orcs invade the planet initially. And I bet in the second, I'd be very surprised. On the second part of this, when it comes out, obviously there's going to be a big Chaos release, which is cool, which is interesting. You know what I mean? That'd be fun. But yeah. I bet there will be little to nothing in regards to the Orcs. It'll be about the Orc forces probably being mopped up. I'd be very surprised if there's anything of value for the Orc faction in general in the second book. I'll probably still buy it. you know, so I can read it. And when I tell you is that it's shit and tell you not to buy it, you know, you can listen to me in future episodes. Like, I'll be like, Steve-O, the formations in here are shit. It's like, oh, well, you weren't specific enough. It's like, mate, you know, what part of the shit?
Lesson learned. Much like Dreadwire will never again buy a special edition Orc Codex.
Oh, he didn't. Oh, Jesus! Another one who didn't listen to me. It's like, oh, the special edition. It's literally just a different cover, mate. And he's like, oh, surely not. It's like, oh, Jesus. Mind you, we got a decent video out of it, so it was worth it in the end.
It was. Yeah, we did. It's well, you know, this Skarner standing in the town square in his tinfoil hat, yelling out, you know, no one listens to him. They really should.
Standing in the town square with a bell ringing to, you know, hear ye. Yeah. I told you, you wouldn't listen. You wouldn't listen. But yeah, like I just find in regards to the campaign book, it's in my eyes because I've been in the hobby for long enough, and I've bought quite a lot of campaign books that Games Workshop have done. Like I went back and I bought like the Eye of Terror book, I bought the Armageddon book. I have the
Eye of Terror was what a stunning book.
What was the last? I think it was like Firestorm or something like that. There was one that was in like 6th or 7th edition, which was a campaign they did. I bought both of the Stormclaw books. Like I'm really into the campaigns, and because I've read them and I've seen how they approach it, pretty much this book is the same old stuff, just reformatted in with a little bit of, you know what I mean? It's literally, this is the Stormclaw campaign with some Genestealer cultists added on top and a little twist to it. It's it's nothing original, man.
It's a difficult task, isn't it? It's got to be a difficult job to make a campaign book.
It's not easy. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's easy.
This length of time has come, and like you say, there's been several campaign books over the years through various editions, and the lore is constantly growing, the storyline's going. And it's got to be really challenging coming up with fresh ideas, especially when they kind of have to include as many of the factions as possible, if not all of them, for the players out there, because they want to include all 40k players in the chance to take part in these campaigns. Obviously, these are big global campaigns that they have in the stores and that, and so if you don't include all the factions, those players are going to feel left out. They're going to feel shortchanged. You know,
true.
They're not going to feel the love from GW, and then it's very hard, especially when it's focused on one sort of small planet or part of the galaxy or system. It's got to be a real challenge coming up with original ideas as what would bring all these factions into this area together. It's got to be a difficult task, but yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about it. You've read through it a lot more than I have. I've kind of skimmed the book, but definitely listening to you and having read what I have read of it, it is very familiar. It is very familiar, and
it's pretty much it's Cadia. Like Vigilus is pretty much Cadia. Yeah. Think about it. The linchpin planet that it might as well be Cadia and the
Armageddon as well. Armageddon.
Well, more so Cadia, because it was like, oh yeah, it's right at the Eye of Terror. It stops the chaos from coming in and out. This one's like, oh, it's right at like a duct passage that we can get from one side of the rift to the other.
Passage through.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, I think it's one of 2 passages, so we'll probably see another campaign eventually for that other planet. But it's like, this is pretty much Cadia 2.0 with various campaigns they've already done. And while I understand it's like, you have a fair point, it's not that easy to write up campaigns and stuff, it's like, it can't be that hard. You know what I mean? Try something a bit more original than, I don't know, maybe, I think the problem is that this isn't really designed for the likes of me, where it's a case of, I've been in the hobby for so long now, and I've seen so many campaign books that, it would have to be something really unique and really interesting to really draw my attention. Where for newer players who haven't read anything like that, this is, you know, they probably love this. But
yeah, quite possibly. I mean, does some of the issues come from the kind of way the storyline is going in general in 40k as it is anyway?
The whole the Imperial versus Chaos. They said that though at the reboot of 8th edition, when 8th edition was coming out, the management were saying, I don't know who it was who specifically stated it, but I do remember something along the lines of it's going to be focused more on the Imperium versus Chaos, because they felt that the narrative had wandered away from that's supposed to be the core focus of the game. Hence, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's quite a strange thing to say as well, because I never got that. It's kind of, to me, 40k Chaos has always predominantly been the biggest threat to the Imperium.
But this is the problem, and then you have Abaddon rocking along, and previously he's been the whipping boy. Then we were talking about the original the Eye of Terror. It's like Chaos kind of won, but kind of didn't.
Yeah.
And then they decided, oh well, we'll blow up Cadia and we'll progress that storyline.
There was a lot of retconning and things going on there, a lot of rewrites and things, and I think partly because of that was. Now, my memory might be a bit hazy, but I'm remembering back to that time, and wasn't there a global campaign in which you could play your games at home and update your results online?
Yeah, you could put your results in. They had a website, and there was like
and that system was massively abused.
It was figured out historically. There's been a lot of blogs about it, and finding information about it can be a bit hard. But pretty much what happened was there was the Imperial side and there was the Chaos side. And what happened was the Chaos side got themselves organized a lot quicker than the Imperial side, and they figured out the game mechanics. So basically what would happen is there would be influence on a planet, and if you put in enough results for a planet, you could trip the influence, but it also had like knock-on effects. So if you focused on specific planets, you could knock them over. And so the Chaos side figured that out. So they obviously played to that specifically. And then I think it actually took the development team and the guys running the campaign to tell the Imperial guys about this influence mechanic. And then at the end, from what I gathered, there was the end result was a pretty much a stalemate, where it's like, because they used Battlefleet Gothic and 40k, so I think the Imperials had like the control of the space lanes, and Chaos had won planet-wise quite a lot of influence. There was the Green Crusade, which not many people actually know about. There was a specific crusade, so a lot of Orc players banded together, and they specifically just carved out a chunk of Imperial space in that campaign, which is, that's really old school, now that I think about it. That was before I started with Orcs, but it's really cool to try and find out the information about it. But I don't think we'll ever see things to that scale anymore, because pretty much what happened was Games Workshop lost control of the narrative at that stage, where the players were like, fuck the Imperium.
If you give the players too much control, then it can take it right out of their hands and take the storyline in a way that they never intended, and leave their writers a bit panicked. Now they're gonna fix it.
Well, this is it.
Such a cool idea, though. Such a cool idea. But yeah, I mean, I've also heard a lot of talk of people obviously being like, you can just put in the results. You don't have to play a game. You could just put in your results.
Oh, technically, you could fudge it. From what I'm not 100% sure on how it ran, though, because I wasn't playing in it. You know what I mean?
No.
So
I remember the book, though.
Sure.
The campaign book. What a awesome. It was a Codex. What was it called?
Eye of Terror, wasn't it?
That's it. Codex Eye of Terror.
It has Abaddon.
Oh, I loved that book.
Grasping.
That book was so good, with the
Cadia
Lost and the Damned,
hand.
and you had the Space Wolf 13th Company in there.
That's right. Yeah.
A thin, small little codex, but it had some great lore and fluff in it. It had great conversion jobs on it, and special rules for like special sort of spin-off armies, and yeah, just a fan. What a brilliant way to do a campaign book. This Vigilus Defiant is much better in production value. It's a nice hardback book. It looks gorgeous. It's got some nice artwork in it. It's probably about
cheap.
5 times thicker. Yeah,
Jesus,
certainly ain't cheap.
It ain't cheap, and it's like £5 less than a real book. Like, holy Christ.
Yeah, it's it was pretty pricey, and I must admit it was. After purchasing it and opening it and flipping through some of the pages, I was pretty much instantly disappointed.
It's almost like you don't follow the advice of your friends. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost is. It almost is. I mean, probably quite foolish of me to buy a book purely for one detachment. Because if I'm honest, I bought it purely because I wanted the Dreadwire detachment, because I thought that'll give my cans and my Death Dreads some kind of buff that will make them much more competitive and playable, and it didn't.
Yeah, but this is the problem though. Even reading the rules for some of the formations that are there, did they actually FAQ whether that worked or not? Because isn't it?
I don't know actually. I haven't. I'll be honest. I haven't looked into it. I'm sure there is. I'd have to look on the community site where you get all the FAQs and stuff, and I'm sure there probably is an FAQ on it. They generally FAQ all.
There was an there was an errata. Yeah, that 2-week one I didn't see anything for it. I could be wrong now. But it's a contradiction of terms in regards to using command points for the specialist detachment units, but then the Orc Codex specifically states that you can't use stratagems on Gretchen units. So it's like, does this supersede that rule? Or...
Yeah, it's pretty... I mean, yeah, until reading that errata, I think it's pretty clear-cut in the Orc Codex where it says, any unit containing entirely grots cannot make use of Orc stratagems, and even in those specialist attachments in the Vigilus Defiant book, those stratagems are listed as Orc
stratagems. Yeah,
stratagems, unlike the ones in the rulebook, which you can use.
Which are the only ones you can use with Gretchen units.
So unless there's something in the errata that says specialist attachments can be used on them, I don't see it happening, to be honest, which is a real shame, because it would be nice to be able to use some stratagems on things like killer cans for sure. But yeah, I don't see it. And even if you could, the stratagems in there aren't great. I think some of the other specialist attachments for the Orcs are a bit better than the Dreadwire one. From what I've read of them, they seem like a little bit more usable. I think it's the Speedwire detachment.
Cult of Speed.
Cult of Speed one, that's got some quite impressive things in there, especially if you're using the Death Killer War Trike. You can got some nice buffs that you can attach to that, and yeah, there is. I don't want to shit all over it, because there is some good out of it, and I see what they were doing as well. I see that they purposely didn't make these detachments overpowered. They equally, if these detachments were so good that you would choose these as like an auto include, that also would have caused a lot of uproar, and it would have that would have reflected on GW badly as well, that they're making them so good, better than what's in the codex, so that it forces you to buy the book, and there would have been all that talk. And so I kind of get that. It's not the sort of codex creep or a campaign book creep. And it's definitely more there to add a little bit of personality to your armies for these campaign games, which I guess are not designed to be overly competitive. They're more fluff, more lore based. But I don't know, there's no way over it. It was just a little bit disappointing from a completely biased, selfish Orc player's point of view. A little bit disappointing. And from what you're saying, lore wise, it sounds equally disappointing. There's not really that much to get excited about in terms of the Orcs.
Well, yeah,
is there any characters in there? Is there any character development for any Orc war bosses that stand out with any kind of significance or anything?
I think they've mentioned like war bosses and big mechs, but it's sort of in passing. You know what I mean? It's not really. There's nothing substantial Like, obviously, if there was, I would have remembered off the top of my head going, oh, yeah, there's this guy, and he's awesome.
Yeah, I think the fact that you don't remember kind of says
it all, yeah.
doesn't it? You've read the book cover to cover, and no one stands out as you. Oh, there's this really cool character that, you know, he's posing a serious threat, and, you know, I don't know whether he's unusually intelligent for an Orc war boss, or he's come up with some cunning strategy or something, and yeah, it doesn't. It's a real shame, actually. But that's just like you say, orcs overall in 40k lore, they're just kind of like, oh, chaos is
comic relief.
The Cicatrix maledictum is spread across. You know, chaos is spilling out. Oh, and the orcs are there too. They're being annoying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Kind of it. They're irritating.
It's like the Imperium just sort of scraping the fungus off the sole of their shoe. Oh, the orcs are there. Oh well. Oh no, we're being invaded. It's like, but the true enemy is coming. Haha. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's they're not taken seriously enough, and they haven't been for a long time. And
no.
I think what they need to do to fix that is, I don't want to keep banging on about it, but they need Ghazghkull to feature prominently in the storyline. They need him. I think they resculpt, they bring out a new model, whether it's part of a campaign or something, and he is back at large. His motives are more clear, and he's focused on something, and he is a proper serious threat to the Imperium, and he's the only character I think that has any, unless Tusker the Demon Killer comes spilling out of the rift.
Well, it's you know what I mean. It's not like the last named character for the orcs is gonna come back anytime soon. You know, taking into account they killed him off.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, here's a named character we banged on about into your codex. Put him in a campaign, and then we just sort of killed him off. Like, I think if that doesn't show the attitude towards the orc faction as a whole, I don't know what does.
Yeah, it's but even chaos in terms of Abaddon does
Failbadon.
Failbadon, as everyone's labelled him now. Is he really posing that much of a threat in himself now? I mean,
it's just,
I know his army's not, but I mean, from the look of this sculpted the model, he's bigger. So I'm hoping that he's been imbued with the gods of chaos, because we know that he gets his powers from all four of the gods of chaos equally, and whether that they have imbued him with more power and grown his body through, he needs to be bigger, and it looks like they have done that. But he's with Primarchs waking up and coming back, and Space Marines now are like a foot taller than regular Space Marines. So where does that leave Chaos Space Marines? Mini little dwarf Marines fighting against them. It just, I'm kind of fumbling through my words here, but I think what I'm getting at is that the whole, whether it's true or not, and whether it's my perception of it, but my perception of the lore and this current storyline in 40k since 8 is that I don't really see the Imperium under threat. And I know that might sound strange because there's a massive, great big fuck off warp rift that's split the galaxy in two. That's pretty fucking threatening. But I see them just as all conquering heroes that are just kicking ass wherever they go. Gilliman doesn't seem to face any real threat. I know Mortarion and what's his face are flying around the galaxy causing problems and things everywhere, but I don't know, I just don't see, even on the battlefield, if you're facing off against an Ultron player with Gilliman and you've got your war boss, he's just going to stamp on him or toe punt him across the battlefield. Even Abaddon stood there. How's Abaddon going to stand up to Gilliman? He's a fucking Primarch. And I'm kind of, although the models look cool and stuff, and I'm sure a lot of Imperium fanboys are frantically typing in the comments section right now, but the thing that makes the thing that makes a hero compelling and makes you back them, makes you root for them. Yeah, totally. When you watch a movie, you know, all the great movie scenes is the hero beaten down, facing insurmountable odds, a foe usually 5 times his size, beating down on him, and he's still standing there defiant. You know, think back to old classic war films like fucking Zulu. You know, the tiny little force holding off against fucking thousands and thousands against all odds. They're gonna lose. They know they're gonna lose, but they stand there fighting anyway. That's heroes I can get behind. That draws me in. That makes me root for the heroes. I want to see a Space Marine commander standing up against an Orc war boss that towers above him like this massive fucking brute that he's like the size of a fucking battle tank, and he's like, my God, how is this? And somehow he manages to win, you know, by using his intelligence or his wit or just pulling through somehow, some way. I don't want to see a fucking massive glorified 20-foot tall Primarch just running around the battlefield kicking the fuck out of anything that even looks at him. It's not appealing, and I think that's, for me, and like I said, maybe I'm perceiving it wrong. Maybe there is a lot more to the lore than I'm realizing, and they are under more threat, but I don't see it. I don't get that vibe from it. And I think they need to make Chaos much more of a threat. I think they need to make Orcs much more of a threat. And they need something that's going to really threaten Primarchs and Primaris Marines and really put them under challenge. And it's going to be interesting to see how GW tackle that, or if they even intend to tackle it. And that's not just coming from an Orc fanboy thing, because I do actually want to root for the good guys as well. But at the moment, I don't root for them at all. I see them as glory boys that really need putting back in their place.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm getting the same type of vibe myself, where it's like, so if we're to understand it, the Imperium has pretty much been split in two. And then there's like the dark side of the Imperium, which doesn't see the Emperor's light. And then there's obviously the part that does. So, you know what I mean? So you're telling us that there's a giant rift, that there's demons pouring out and there's chaos. You're telling us that all these threats are happening, that, you know, the Imperium should be on its last legs and stuff like that. But it just, there isn't a sense of threat. You're telling us that all these things, that it's all going shop du pair, it's all going arseways for the Imperium. But it's going to be the same old. There's no sense of threat. We always know that at the end of the day, the Space Marines will always win. There's no sense. There's no gamble. There's no sense of loss. You were talking about how, like, in the Zulu Wars and Rorke's Drift, how they held out. That's because those guys quite literally could have been killed and wiped out, and should have been, but it was a heroic stand. But there's, you can get behind that because you can, you know, you root for the underdog. You can, you know, with that sense, there has to be a sense of loss, a potential that not only, you know, that Vigilus or whichever planet that they're going to lose, that quite frankly they could lose and it won't be the end of it. Like, imagine if they put Terra itself under threat, and not just, you know, in passing, but if they put in a campaign where it's like, listen, this is it, guys. Chaos are heading towards Terra. You know what I mean? Abaddon got his shit together. This is the last push, and then you'll have like the Primarchs that are there standing against the you know, the demon Primarchs, and you could do like a big battle for Terra where they fight, and they could fight all the way up into the Golden Throne and whatever, and then you could either kill the Emperor or he survives, and then you could do anything then, because there's a load of storylines and stuff like that where it's a case of, if the Emperor dies, then he'll reincarnate, or does it all just go to shit and chaos rules over everything? That's the gamble that you could have. So, you know what I mean? Even if the Emperor dies, it could go, you could, you know, the whole storyline of 40k could totally change. Like, utterly, totally change. But it would be interesting. Imagine being part of that.
Yeah, it's. I think sometimes I was thinking about it today actually, and I kind of liken it to like a TV series that's gone on too long. That the series goes on and it's kind of comes to a logical finale, or even a movie franchise. Like you have a trilogy, you've got the beginning, the middle, and the end, and it comes to a big explosive finale. And then the movie studios say, there's a lot of money in this.
We could make a franchise.
Star Wars Episode 7.
Franchise.
That's and a new trilogy, and we could start the storyline off again. But then it's a bit of an anticlimax because you've had the big climax, you've had the big thing. Where does it go from there? Then they start pulling out ideas, and they start taking the story too far and in ridiculous directions and things. And I feel that there's definitely a. I'm not saying that's what's happened with 40k because it hasn't, but I liked the old setting of 40k. Primarchs were the stuff of legend.
Yeah,
the Emperor is on his golden throne.
They've lost their luster now. It's like with do you know what you've made me think about it? It's like when you look at the Star Wars films, and it's a case of with the Han Solo film, they came out like you were always told that Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon in a card game. You know what I mean? Yep. And you know how him and Chewie met years back. But I think the problem is you have to leave some things, some stones need to be left unturned. There has to be some mystery to it. You know what I mean? That's
100%.
There's an allure to it then. Whereas if you go into the details and you show the card game, and then you show how they meet, and and you go into every single detail as to why the Millennium Falcon is the way it is, and all these type of things, it loses the allure. It loses its sense of mystery. Do you know what I mean? Because
I could not agree more.
Exactly. I think that's the problem. Like
Prometheus.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
My favourite movie of all time, Alien. The mystery in that, the derelict spacecraft, the setting, where did this thing come from? What is it? What is its purpose? Like it just there's so many questions unanswered, and people want answers to it, but what they don't realize is they don't want the answers because the answers will not be as good as their imagination.
Yeah, that's it, man.
The space jockey in the cockpit, that's this weird looking alien skeletal life form that's had something better. You're never told anything more. You're left to imagine what this race was, what they were doing out there, why were they carrying this cargo of eggs. Then Ridley Scott had to go back and make a fucking another film about it and make the space jockeys just big white bald men. And it just fucking, and we should like that being two bald knobs, but it's just, they just have to go and fuck with shit sometimes, and sometimes it's better to leave it alone. And I know people said that the 40k universe, the story needed to move forward because they said for ages it was this minute to midnight scenario, and it just been that for years, and it needed something to freshen it up and bring the storyline. And I think I was in two minds about it because I think the storyline itself, the timelines as such, I always saw as less important. I just saw it as we are playing battles in this setting. It was there as a setting for us to play battles in. Now, within that setting, you can tell lots of different tales of heroism and horror and battles and, things, I don't think it necessarily needs the big storylines of the Emperor and the Primarch. I think you can focus on smaller storylines in smaller systems and go more into the individuals on the planet, tell it from their perspective. Some of the best books I've read from 40k have told the stories from the perspective of an Imperial citizen. I remember a really, really old book, this is going back to the 90s now, but a short story I read, and it was told the story from an Imperial citizen's perspective of a Tyranid invasion, and it was fucking like terrifying the way it worked. It was just him going about his daily business, and then the spores were dropping, and the things were running amok and killing everyone, and there was chaos, and it was just it did such a good job of putting what a threat the Tyranids are and how just horrific they are. And I think if they focused in on storylines like that, like you were saying about a campaign set on Terra, sort of bringing the storyline forward, I'd quite like to see a story in the current timeline of a valiant last stand by, I think it's the Blood Angels that are largely cut off on the other side of the galaxy. But let's have a look on the other side of this rift. and focusing on some of the stories that are going on there, where people are seriously fucked. No help is coming. They're not getting any signals from Terra. The light of the Emperor is blind to them. They are out there on their own. No help is coming. You can imagine some amazing speeches from a Space Marine commander or an Imperial commander talking to the troops like, we are here, we are going to die, no help is coming, but, we're going to stand and face them anyway, because it's our duty to the Emperor. I mean, stories like that, they're going to get me goose pimpled, and, they're going to get me they're going to get me back in the guys. And, planets that are being overrun by orcs, they're calling for aid, but no aid is coming because they don't see those planets as important, because they're currently fighting a more important war over by the Rift on Vigilus, for example. And there's planets falling to the orcs, and you can tell these stories from the perspective of the citizens and the armies that are fighting on those planets, feeling abandoned, feeling like they deserted by the Imperium that they're fighting for.
And then
there's so many
potentially
storylines.
Yeah, potentially turning traitor. Then, if you're feeling you're abandoned and deserted,
definitely.
And you know what I mean, you have these chaos guys coming in. You could do interesting things.
Taking slaves, the Dark Elder becoming more confident. Spilling out from Camera, taking more slaves than ever before because the Imperium's so weakened. I would have loved the storyline that they started since sort of Gilliman waking up and things, that a lot of the Imperium don't see him. Maybe they don't believe that the Primarch's back alive, or maybe they see him as someone trying to usurp the Emperor. I would have loved to have seen a bit of a civil war in the Imperium taking hold and weakening the Imperium, because people are fighting for their own selfish agendas, and they just don't seem to have focused in on this stuff as much as I could. I would really like to see it as more of a last stand, definitely. Just the Imperium constantly being ground down. Right now, it feels much more like, even with this huge rift, it feels like the Imperium are just making a massive comeback. And
just
with
talk
of more Primax waking up, and I don't know. I think some people in the comments section are going to rip me a new one on this and say, "What the hell are you talking about? There's a rift across the gate, and you're telling me the Imperium are stronger than ever." But that's just the vibe I get from it.
There's no sense of threat. Yeah. There really isn't. Like,
no.
even with the galaxy being ripped in two, and then they could do interesting things with the Primaris Marines are coming in. So then the older Mark Space Marines, you know what I mean? You could have civil wars within each sort of, not legion, but you know what I mean, like each chapter themselves. You know what I mean?
And
you could have something interesting,
in my opinion.
They could have. That was great potential. Great potential it could have been.
I'm not a big fan. I like the Primaris models. I think they're a really good update to the old Space Marines, and I like the larger scale, because what originally, I mean, when they were first hinted at and people were talking, there was rumours of what they called true scale Marines.
Yeah.
And so when you put a Primaris next to an Imperial Guard, it looks like the scale it should be, as it talks about in the lore, as you see on the computer games and the cutscenes and things. And so it worked, but I almost feel like they didn't want to bring them in such a shocking way and replace old Marines, that they almost had to develop some lore to go with them so that they could fight alongside the normal Marines during this transition period. But I don't know. It's like the Emperor of Mankind made the Marines in that image, but then some guy can make them better. Wasn't that heresy to fuck with that?
I don't know. I think it was a sort of...
Didn't Fabius Bile try that, and he was labelled a heretic for trying to improve upon what was already supposedly perfection from the Emperor? And
I think they pulled a Clone Wars army style shenanigans, where it's like, oh, look, well, we were told by the Emperor 10,000 years ago to start building this. We've been building this in secret all this time. Do you remember that in Star Wars? It was
I would have preferred if it had just been Mark 10 armor. I would have preferred if it had just been Mark 10 armor, and they were, for a little while on the tabletop, it's going to look a bit strange because they're going to fight alongside your sort of older models of Marines. But I would have preferred it without the storyline of Primaris, personally. and I would have preferred it if they had just made them true scale Marines. Because it lowers the threat of chaos. The Chaos Marines now are little miniature versions that are not as good, and it's just
Chaos Dwarves. Finally, we've Chaos Dwarves in the 41st millennium.
Yeah, Chaos Squats.
Yeah, well, you have to keep scaling up eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
But the newer Chaos Space Marine models that are coming out there, they seem to be bigger than the previous ones. So while they're not as big as Primaris, they still, like if you look at the Death Guard models that they have compared to the multi-part Death Guard models that we used to have back in 3rd edition or whatever else, they're a lot bigger. So while they may not be as big as Primaris, there's not as much of a size gap between the likes of the newer Death Guard stuff and
I think they need to be just as big. I think they need to be just as big for that whole reason of having a threat, having an equal foe. Chaos Space Marines have always been that, that yin to the yang, the equal foe. Yeah, they have got the armor, they've got the weapons they've got, but they're also imbued with the power of chaos, which made them that much more of a threat. And the Loyalist Marines have faith on their side. But the fact that they're better, it just doesn't. So hopefully they are going to be the same scale as Primaris, and they can get around that in lore-wise, I guess, by maybe the rift opening up as this surge of chaotic power, blessings of chaos that that they are warped and have grown in power and strength because of the powers of chaos. So Primaris are genetically modified, whereas the Chaos Space Marines are powers from dark gods and things. Maybe that's one way around it, but in terms of orcs, we need a prime war boss. We need Ghazghkull to be buff to fuck and come out with Tusker Demon Killer spilling out of the warp now. Khorne's got bored of him, now and kicked him back out of the warp.
Send them back out, but it wouldn't really matter. Like you were talking about Ghazghkull coming back, and then having specific events happening where he's predominant. But the whole thing is that it even goes into talk about it in this Vigilus campaign book, is that time itself has now been fractured in and around the rift. So each Imperial sector has its own timeline. So we're not going to see anymore the normal timeline where it's like this happened in M40.965, blah, blah, blah. You know yourself. It's even the timelines are different. So it'll be like, well, this happened in this timeline, and that happened in that timeline. And even if we look at the Orc Codex as well, where it talks about Ghazghkull, and Ghazghkull is supposedly sighted in various locations simultaneously. So it's all a bit. There's no just one narrative anymore, or there's no just one timeline. It's all anything can happen at any time, which makes it easier.
Maybe it gives him the opportunity to go and steal 2 of his favourite gun.
I come back. Maybe, or his favorite power claw, but it's all a bit. Do you know what I mean? But there's no direct narrative. There's no sense of threat. You don't really feel attached. It's like everything matters and then nothing matters at the same time. Do you know what I mean? That's the feeling I get with the lore. Is there's no gravitas to it. There's nothing. It's like, yeah, it's cool to read and it's interesting to see what direction they go with it, but I don't feel compelled to read it, or it doesn't, like me reading this Vigilus book doesn't have me going, oh, I really need to go out and buy that Primaris Calgar, or I'm looking forward to the chaos stuff to the point where I'm gonna go out and buy a chaos army, which is what you'd want. Like if the fluff is that compelling, it should draw you to want.
The miniatures draw you. The miniatures are stunning, absolutely stunning. They're gorgeous. I think the miniatures draw you in, and I know there's some detractors from it, and it does split opinion. But in my opinion, I am loving 8th edition. I love the way the game plays. I love a lot of the changes that were brought in, even some of the controversial ones that a lot of people don't like. I am all for. I generally think it's one of the best editions of the game ever.
Jeez, that's a bold statement there.
It is a bold statement, and comment section, come at me.
Death of 1,000 paper cuts.
It's all down to personal taste. And hey, look, there's people out there that love 7th edition, so go after them before you come after me. But
how dare you, sir?
So I love in gameplay terms. I love 8th edition. The new miniatures and stuff they're producing look stunning and gorgeous. I think there was a bit of a misstep with the Orc range, in my opinion, in the fact that they were mono build.
We may have waffled on for that. I love how that slowly creeps into this one as well. It's like, we're not bitter.
Into everything. I'm never going to let that one drop. But it's the lore. The lore. The codexes now, when I buy them and read them, I don't enjoy them as much for the lore. The rule book, I used to love reading through the lore in the rule books. Drew me in. So dark, so just no hope. It was just so dark, and the Imperium was just fucked, and it was just a bloody interesting, good, dark read, and about these tales of heroism against all odds and things. And I don't get that sense from it now. I get the sense that Imperium's like, right, we've had enough of this now. Now we're kicking ass, and I guess there is some good to come out of things like that, and those storylines can be good as well after they've been on a bit of an ass kicking for so long. But I'm just not, like yourself, I'm not compelled to read the stories, and the stories don't draw me in like they used to. I love the game, I love the miniatures, but lore and fluff, and I guess it's down to a personal taste thing, but personal taste for me, I'm not enjoying it as much. I'm not enjoying it as much as I used to back in the 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th edition. God, they had some good lore and stories going on then.
So what do you think it is then? Do you think it's because a lot of the writers from the old days are gone, and then we have different writers now? Or is it a case of you've read different lore, so maybe like you feel nostalgic about it? Like what would you say it is? Do you think it's like a bit of nostalgia, or do you think it's a different caliber of writing? Like, I
think it's a lot of those things combined. You're talking about the nostalgia. I think after I'd seen one of the latest Star Wars films, I posted on Facebook saying, "Look, just come out of the cinema. I've watched it, and I don't know what to think about it." It's just I was a bit like meh about the whole thing. I'm like, it's the first Star Wars film I've ever watched that I didn't come out thinking that was bloody good. And a friend of mine commented saying, listen, you're just looking at it through rose-tinted nostalgic glasses. You know, you've got to forget the old trilogy now that's past, and this is the new Star Wars. And I'm like, I just wanted to shoot that comment down. Roy, I'm like, no. Don't disregard every point I made and say I'm nostalgic, so my opinion doesn't matter. No, the fact is the original trilogy was fucking amazing, and it can never be topped. And as they're proving now with these new films. And so but there probably is a little bit of nostalgia. Obviously, nostalgia does play a big part for all of us in all things. You know, it does. You do have that rose-tinted glasses thing, and like you say, the different writers now, obviously it does change. I don't know, and I guess it's just a lot of things I feel have been shoehorned in, like the Primaris storyline. I almost feel like the models came first, the storyline came afterwards. And I think it's because you're trying to balance all these things, storyline and releases and miniatures and gameplay, and you're trying to make all those things work together, and it's got to be a fucking hard job. Like the talk of Emperor coming back. Oh,
jeez,
no,
I don't know where you're getting that from.
It just doesn't appeal to me. It's the Primarchs coming back. I just feel,
I suppose, yeah,
it's something people think they want, but I think it's going to do more damage long term, because you've lost the history and the whole talk of the Horus Heresy. And then we got the Horus Heresy books, which were amazing and a good read, but I never really thought that we'd see them come back in the 40k timeline. I didn't think we'd see that. It was amazing reading about them in the books, and some incredible books that were real page turners and I could not put down, and bloody loved those books. But they were the stuff of legend, and it gave a backstory. And if the backstory is just coming back to the current time, it doesn't leave much of a backstory. And
It's the same thing about some stones should be left unturned.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
leave some mystery. Leave some mystery. Don't take it all away. Don't reveal your hand. Don't reveal everything. Yeah.
There should be a desire to want to know. You should want to know more, but that doesn't mean that everything should be explained to you. You know what I mean?
You shouldn't always get what you want.
Yeah, definitely not. You know what I mean?
Because it won't be as good. It won't be as good as you think it will be. Because nothing can beat what your imagination conjures up. No writer can beat your imagination. Because it's always going to be different, and it's not going to. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that. And
but it's like the horror films and stuff like we were saying, where it's like the monster in the film. You don't see the monster. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to a point, and it builds up, and it builds up, and then it gets to a stage in the film where they show the big bad monster, and you look at it and you go, "That's naff." You know what I mean? Because you'll always imagine it to, you know what I mean? It's you always imagine it to be worse, or how your mind perceived it would be different, because we're all different people. We've all had different experiences in life, so therefore how we each perceive things will be slightly unique. You know what I mean in that regard? So if they were to bring a miniature
as well,
out,
we all differ. We all differ. We're all different. I'll never forget a friend after Alien Resurrection was out, and a friend of mine had watched it, and I said, "Oh, it's crap, isn't it?" I said, he said, "No, it's the best one." And I was like, "What?" And his reason for that was, I was like, "It was crap. What are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, at least you see the aliens on this." I'm like, "You're a dick. You're a dick." But he's entitled to his opinion, as wrong as they may be. Like you understand nothing. You don't get it at all. And but yeah, I don't know. People will. I'm sure the comment section will be interesting. I look forward to looking at the comment section once this video's up, actually, because it'll be interesting to see what the guys listening now, what their opinions are, and whether you agree with us or not. I'd be very interested in hearing your views on it, and how you think the lore and the story in the 40k universe is developed, and if you like it, and if you like this Vigilus Defiant book more than we did.
Or did you find value in the Vigilus Defiant book? Not only did you like it, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. You're paying your hard-earned cash for these books. Do you think ultimately are they worth value? And that's what I have to ask myself looking into it. It's like, would I advise other Orc players to buy this book?
No.
Orc players, no.
I would tell Orc players to do the if they've had the same choice that I had a bit of money for Christmas burning a hole in my pocket, and I was on the site weighing up for quite a while. Do I buy that box of flash kits, or do I get the Vigilus Defiant book? And yeah, I made the wrong fucking call. So guys, buy yourself some flash kits. They're awesome models. They've got loads of extras and optional bits in there. You can mix them with your knobs. You can do great conversions with them. Flash kits are cool. They've got some cool rules. You're going to have a lot more fun with a box of flash kits and save yourself a few quid as well. So that's my advice to anyone wanting to buy the Vigilus book. Don't buy flash kits instead.
Buy miniatures. More miniatures is always a good way to go.
Learn from my mistakes. But yeah. Well, it's a shame as well, because even after the initial disappointment of seeing, these specialist attachments are shit. My Dreadwar's not going to use them. They're crap. And then I thought to myself, well, I spent all the money. Maybe it will just be a damn good read. But now you're telling me it's not even that. So yeah.
Well, for me personally, but that's what I was saying. Like, for me, because I've read so many of them, it's just it's the same type of stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas if someone who hasn't, this is why I said maybe for the newer players. But if you're just an Orc player looking to buy this just for the formations, or I mean specialist attachments, I wouldn't bother. But if you're a new player to the hobby, you might actually enjoy this, because you wouldn't have seen previous campaign books, and this type of stuff might be new to you. So if you're new to the hobby, then you might want to be part of the storyline as it develops and play the campaign with your friends, which is what I could see.
And if you want inspiration and ideas for campaigns as well, because it's got some great rules in there for doing linked games and stuff. So I guess that's something we haven't really got into. There is some good stuff in there on how to link your games, and especially if you've never played a campaign before, there's some great tips and ideas in there and rules and special scenarios for playing games that can link up and make your games a little bit more interesting and a bit more impactful and meaningful. Because you said quite early on in this video, in this podcast, talking about how you haven't played in campaigns and things. Campaigns can be great fun. I haven't done them for a long time because I don't have enough players to really get any sort of substantial campaign going, but I have done in the past. We've made homebrew campaigns at home. I ran a campaign once. I think there was 5 of us taking part in it, and I did a map-based campaign, and I drew a big map out and did it in a sort of a hexagonal grid thing, and
planetary empires.
Yeah, we were fighting. Yeah, a similar idea to that, but I drew it on paper, put it up on a corkboard. We had pins that different coloured pins that represented our armies, and we had a certain area of the map, and the idea was to take over the map for the central bit, and different areas of the map. If you won a battle on that, you took that over. That there was like a a factory depot part of the city, and there was the artillery gun position in the city. If you caught that, you would get a preliminary bombardment at the beginning of all your battles. If you caught the thing, you could extra heavy support choices. And there were little things that gave little bonuses, and it was really good fun. And it was a great sort of city fight campaign, and all the games were sort of linked up. And campaigns are great fun if you've got enough players that are dedicated and want to do them. And it's great, especially if you want to play games that are more focused on the lore and the fluff and character, rather than just I bring 2,000, you bring 2,000, let's see who's best and who can make the best list. And it can bring a whole new element of story and fluff into your games, which makes them a lot more fun. So, and this book offers a lot of good stuff in that regards. Specialist attachments, certainly for all players anyway. Meh.
Nothing to write home about. But yeah, there are campaign rules. We might as well talk about them a little bit. There are campaign rules. No, I haven't played any campaigns, but I have read various campaign rules, and these are okay to start off with. There's a lot that could be built on them. It's just various. It's just telling you, you'll play this mission this week, and then next week play the next mission, and there'll be these special rules, and you'll get extra points if you play the missions that are specific. So if you play whichever mission it tells you to play this week, you'll gain extra points for your team, as opposed to playing a normal mission. So there's a lot of stratagems and missions. So there is actually a fair chunk of stuff in there for playing a campaign, which would really be handy, like I said before, for someone who hasn't seen this type of stuff before. So it's really, I think the best value for money for players is if there's 2 guys who are probably new into the hobby, because asking one of the guys to buy it for 40 quid is a bit steep. So I think if there's like 3 or 4 of yous who's are pretty new into the hobby, what you should do is band together, throw in a few quid, and just buy the book, and then you can play the campaign with your mates. And I think that's where this book would be the most value to someone. If there's 3 or 4 of you, you band together, you buy it, and you play the campaign. Otherwise, don't bother.
There you go. That's the verdict.
That's it. It's like people just jump into the very end of the podcast just to get the 10-second summary.
Vigilus Defiant, don't bother.
Don't bother unless you're new and your mates and yourself want the band together and buy it.
There you go. There you go, guys. There is another very fair, impartial, and unbiased review from your favourite 2 BALD knobs. We're like Siskel and Ebert here.
So I think that pretty much wraps it up for this episode.
It does. So, what I know, just before we go, I want to ask you, we've got some, both of us have a special announcements to make in regards to our channels, don't we?
Yeah, so I think it's on, I could be getting the date wrong, but I think it's in February, middle of February, so about the 16th of February, I will have created my channel 10 years ago. So 10 years on YouTube. You can tell I've been doing nothing with it. Yeah. It's like, why haven't you got millions of subscribers? It's like, I just, you know what I mean? I just didn't quite get around to it.
10 years, that is
crazy.
amazing. A decade of YouTube. That's incredible. That's good, man. That's good. Well, I'm not quite as old. I will be celebrating my 1-year anniversary on the 13th, I believe it is. Even as saying it, I'm questioning whether that's right, but I'm almost certain it's 13th. So unlucky for some. But yeah, I'll be releasing some kind of special video on the 13th to celebrate my year anniversary. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing on it yet. I've got some ideas. I think it's just going to be a bit of a casual sort of look at the man behind the camera kind of thing. Talk about
life
myself
behind the lens. Yeah.
Just sort of bang on about myself. One of my favourite subjects. So yeah, if anyone's interested, join me on that. That should be good fun anyway. But yeah, I can't believe it's been a year. It's been quite a good journey, and there's been some. Yeah, I've made some friends, and it's gonna be good. I'll talk about it all more on the video though when I do it. But yeah, it's been cool, and I look forward to seeing whatever sort of special content you produce to celebrate your 10 years.
I don't know. I'll have to try and show.
Got to throw something together. I mean, me personally, I would love to hear some of your stories. I'd love to hear.
I might do that actually.
Like I want to hear what it was like making videos 10 years ago on YouTube, because it was a very different beast back then, wasn't it?
I can talk about YouTube. I think I'll talk about YouTube over the years and what's changed through it and what I've seen. And then I think I'll talk about me and the hobby, because I don't think I've actually sat down and talked about how I got into the hobby and my journey through it. So that's over 20 years worth of stuff. So
cool, yeah, I'd like to hear that. Yes, good stuff. Good stuff.
An interesting video.
Do you still have your very first video?
My very first video is still up on YouTube. It's a load of pictures I took of orc boys, and I put them.
You will have to link that in. You'll have to link that in. I'll be linking my first video in on mine, just to see how far I've come. Even though I'm still running on the same equipment. But yeah. Anyway, guys, I think that is about it from us for this episode. I don't know what we're going to talk about on the next one, but
I'm sure something will happen between now and then. Yeah, hopefully we won't leave it as long either.
No. It's been a while, this one. But all right, guys, that is 6+ Stevo signing out.
Take it easy, guys. I'll see you in the next one.